Good evening, you're watching Brass-tacks. I'm Zaka Jacob. There was a political face-off over the meeting of the Chinese Communist Party's delegation along with members of the BJP and the RSS. Now, while such regular interactions between political parties is quite normal, the opposition Congress has made an issue out of it. Now, this is despite the fact that when the UPA was in power, the Congress accused of signing an MOU with the CCP. The BJP had made that a huge political talking point at one point of time. Now, the Congress is asking the same question of the BJP and the RSS as to how, 5 years after Galwan, after some of our soldiers were killed there, can the ruling party meet with a delegation of the ruling party of China. But at the same time, it's not like all is well, because China has rejected India's claims to the Shaksgam Valley, and India has said that the act of Pakistan granting the Shaksgam Valley to China back in 1963, that act in itself was illegal, and India does not recognize the Treaty of 1963, whereby this valley was given away by Pakistan into China. This was Pakistan's backdoor way of getting China involved in the Kashmir dispute. Now, it shows that even when there is a relative period of thaw in the overall bilateral relationship. Remember, it started when the two leaders, Prime Minister Modi and President Xi Jinping of China, met in Kazan in Russia in October of 2024. That's where they agreed to the disengagement process. That disengagement is complete, but the next two stages, which is de-escalation and de-induction of troops, removing the 50,000 troops on either side, that is far from complete. So, Delhi, can it fully ever trust the dragon given the ongoing developments related to the Shaksgam Valley and also at the same time this political tete-a-tete that seems to have happened between the CCP and the BJP? Let's listen into some political reactions first.
First of all, the territory you have mentioned are part of China's territory, and China's infrastructure activities in its own territory is beyond reproach. China and Pakistan have signed border agreements and determined the border between the two countries since the 1960s. These are rights of China and Pakistan as sovereign states.
Shaksgam Valley is Indian territory. We have never recognized the so-called China-Pakistan boundary agreement that happened in 1963. We have consistently maintained that the agreement is illegal and invalid. We do not recognize the so-called China-Pakistan economic corridor either, which passes through Indian territory that is under forcible and illegal occupation of Pakistan. The entire Union territories of Jammu and Kashmir and Ladakh are an integral and inalienable part of India.
India has made it clear that the Shaksgam Valley is part of sovereign Indian territory. But why is there dispute over this territory? Now, if you go back in history, the Shaksgam Valley is located in the remote high-altitude region of the northern Karakoram ranges. The Shaksgam Valley is a disputed area that lies within the Hunza-Gulgit region of Pakistan-occupied Kashmir. Now, the valley borders Xinjiang, which is China's southernmost province, or westernmost province, in fact. To the northern side of the valley is Xinjiang, which is Chinese territory. And in the east is Siachen, which happens to be Indian territory, spanning approximately about 5,000 square kilometers. Now, the region's strategic location allows for the visual monitoring of the line of actual control, and that makes it a crucial point of contention between India, China, and Pakistan. Now, in 1963, in a treaty that India does not recognize, right after the 1962 war between India and China, Pakistan, in a sleight of hand, gave away the Shaksgam Valley to China in a way to allow for the backdoor entry of China into the Kashmir dispute, which is why even in 2019, when Article 370 was abrogated, it was not just Pakistan that took it up as an issue of contention, but also China, because China says there are parts of this disputed territory which it claims, and therefore it also issued a statement against the abrogation of 370. That whole thing traces its genesis back to 1963, when Pakistan gave away about 5,000 square kilometers to China, which India considers illegal all the way back to 50 years ago.
India considers 1963 agreement between Pakistan and China as illegal. Therefore, any activity in Shaksgam Valley is concerned, we do not approve of it, and in this terms, MEA has already issued this statement. Therefore, the joint statement which has been issued in China, what I understand about the CPEC 2.0, we do not accept it, and we consider that it is an illegal action which is being carried out by the two nations.
So that is the Chief of Army Staff today in his press conference saying that India does not recognize the grant of this 5,000 kilometers of Shaksgam Valley by Pakistan to China. This is something that India will never recognize, and the CPEC 2.0, which passes through this disputed territory, will not be recognized by India as well. Now, this provocation from the Chinese side, it started with the spokesperson from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in Beijing. You heard her bite a moment ago. It comes at a time when there is a sort of reset of ties between India and China. It started in October of 2024 when both leaders, Prime Minister Modi and President Xi Jinping of China, met in Kazan in Russia on the sidelines of the SCO summit. In that meeting, India and China agreed to mutually patrol the LAC. The first big step that they took was towards disengagement of the 50,000 plus troops on either side. This was a significant step in reducing tensions. A couple of months after that, the disengagement process got completed. The dialogue began between both countries. In June of last year, there was the formal resumption of the Kailash Mansarovar Yatra, which was, of course, suspended in the aftermath of the Galwan incident and, of course, COVID. This symbolized the revival of cultural and religious ties. A month later, in July of that year, the Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi visited Delhi. He met with Prime Minister Modi, External Affairs Minister Dr. Jaishankar, and National Security Advisor Ajit Doval. A few days after that, Prime Minister Modi went to China for the SCO summit. He went to Tianjin. It was the first visit by the Indian Prime Minister to China in over 7 years. In October of 2025, there was a mega milestone with the resumption of the first direct commercial flights, first between Shanghai and Delhi, and also between Kolkata and Guangzhou. This was after 5 years after direct flights had been cancelled. And between July and November of 2025, India also resumed tourist visas for Chinese citizens, further enhancing people-to-people ties.
It was Indian Army Chief General Rupendra Dwivedi who once again clarified on Shaksgam Valley. He mentioned that India does not accept the 1963 agreement between Pakistan and China, and that's why whatever activities are happening there are illegal activities by these two nations. Now, this issue started with a query that came to Ministry of External Affairs of India, where it was responded categorically that Shaksgam Valley is an area that belongs to India. This area, remember, is very close to Siachen glaciers and is in Karakoram range. It is in fact a broader part of Pakistan-occupied Jammu and Kashmir, where in an agreement that happened back in 1963, Pakistan in a way gifted this particular region to China. This is happening at a time when India and China have recently disengaged from Depsang and Demchok areas. But it seems that Shaksgam Valley is the new bone of contention. However, Indian Army Chief today once again clarified and in fact reiterated the stand of India, where he said that we do not accept the agreement between China and Pakistan that happened back in 1963, and whatever activities are happening in this particular area are illegal activities.
So I want to deal with this contentious issue in two parts. One, this political meeting between representatives of the BJP, RSS on the one side and the Communist Party of China. And then, of course, there is this whole issue of Shaksgam Valley, which now China has thrown into the mix, given CPEC 2.0. I want to go across to Lieutenant General retired S.L. Narasimhan, is former member of the National Security Advisory Board. Pinak Ranjan Chakravarti is former Secretary in the Ministry of External Affairs. Let me start with you, General Narasimhan. You know, political contacts between political parties happen all the time. It shouldn't be that big a concern or a consideration. But now the Congress seems to have raised an issue with the fact that the BJP and RSS members of some of them have met with this visiting Chinese CCP delegation at a time when they say that the relationship is not normal. We've seen what happened in Galwan and its aftermath. Yes, there is a normalization that's begun from October 2024 when Modi and Xi Jinping met, but the relationship is far from normal. So such a meeting should not happen. How do you view it?
Thank you very much, Zaka, for getting me on your show. 2 points I'll mention on this. One is, it is a party-to-party kind of a meeting and an interaction. It is part of the international liaison department, international department of CPC, which has come as a delegation led by Ms. Sun Hayan. So that is something which is to be seen as a party-to-party kind of a thing, which this IDCPC always does in China. That is their main job. That is one. And second thing is, linking this to various other issues, I think we need to be a little cautious and careful, basically because this is a delegation which has come, which is still in India. I'm sure they are going through their own meetings that have been approved by the government. And so that is something which will go on. We need to differentiate between a party-to-party kind of interaction and the government-to-government kind of interaction. These two are two different things. That is one. Having said that, in the initial reaction, you talked about Shaksgam Valley. I'll just make one point on that. And that is, if you read that agreement of 1963, in which Pakistan has ceded this territory of 5,180 square kilometers to China, there is a clause which says, once the status of Shaksgam Valley is decided between India and Pakistan, whosoever gets Shaksgam Valley will start negotiating with China. So, which means that area is disputed, and it is still disputed. Since that is not done, but even if China claims it is their territory, it'll still be questionable because of that particular clause which is there in that agreement.
But the reason why it has come to light now is because of this CPEC 2.0. They are extending one part of the China-Pakistan Economic Corridor through the Shaksgam Valley, which has been India's primary opposition to the BRI. China is saying that why should India oppose, because this was never India's territory, Pakistan gave it to us. What is India's legal legs to claim this territory, because the opposition is starting from the CPEC?
So my point is this, CPEC or otherwise, that particular clause of the agreement of 1963 keeps that area as disputed. So if it's a disputed territory that has been given by somebody to somebody else, it still remains disputed. So that is where I think we need to be very clear about.
Okay.
China can claim anything, Pakistan can claim anything, but I think Shaksgam Valley remains our territory and will continue to be our territory as and when this thing gets resolved.
So let me ask Pinak Ranjan Chakravarti, as former ambassador, former secretary in the MEA, you know, it is always a good thing to have contacts between countries, between delegations. I mean, the governments are regularly meeting. You know, the Prime Minister and Xi Jinping met in Kazan. They also met in Tianjin. At various levels, the foreign minister level, the NSA level, there are all kinds of interactions that happen between Indian and Chinese leaders. So why can't political parties meet? The Congress's contention is these are not normal times. You're basically giving some kind of a blank check to the Chinese, and you have not gone back to the condition that you had in 2020 when Galwan happened, that is status quo ante. You have to go back to the pre-2020 position, which so far we have not gone back to.
I don't think this kind of hard and fast rule can be applied. That unless you do this, then this will not happen. That doesn't happen in diplomacy. China is our largest neighbor, and we are the top two countries in the world in terms of population. Should we then stop all trade with China? The next question will be that you have not achieved your status quo ante, according to the statement. So hence we should stop everything? That doesn't work like that. The economic and commercial relations are different. And obviously, when a political party meets the visiting political party, is it the first time it is happening? No, it has happened before in the past. So what is the great sort of hoo-ha about? So I think that this is quite normal. And as you said, that there is a little bit of thaw that has set in because of the geopolitical conditions prevailing in the world today. And China's economic heft is clearly recognized. And that is why we have to deal with China. We need some things from China. China needs some things from us. But yes, in a sense that the border issue will continue to intrude. And as General Narasimhan said, that, you see, the land remains disputed. Whatever they can do, whatever its status at the moment, China may be occupying it and building whatever it is on there, for whatever strategic reasons they have, being Siachen being on one side, that is one reason. But it remains disputed in international law because the UN resolutions are also there, although we don't claim the UN resolutions and we say we will deal with them bilaterally. It doesn't mean that China has legal rights over that territory.
But if they are
That
building
is
fundamental sort of infrastructure projects there, which fundamentally alters the strategic nature and the strategic advantage there, then what can India do? It's not like India can take this matter to the International Court of Justice, right?
no. India is certainly not taking the matter anywhere.
Yeah.
If we haven't done it since 1963, we are not going to do it now.
Exactly.
I think it's very clear that we will have to deal with it bilaterally. And as the clause said, as General Narasimhan said, that there is a clause that the territory remains disputed. We are simply maintaining our position. So I don't know why it has suddenly come up now, because obviously something must have happened that some journalist asked a question and the
No,
response
it's come up
came.
because China has announced this CPEC 2.0, CPEC 2.0 through Shaksgam Valley.
Yeah,
And of
right.
course, then journalists
Of course,
ask questions to the spokesperson of the ministry there. Yeah.
That is also our stated position that we do not recognize the CPEC because we believe that it is through occupied Indian territory. These are very well stated positions and long held positions.
Okay.
And that is why I think China already has a CPEC. It may be upgrading it to 2.0, but the CPEC is already there and it exists. And when it started, we had already said that we don't recognize it because
Correct. Okay, so I'd request both Ambassador Pinak Chakravarti and also General Narasimhan to stay on with us, because there's another, all of this is happening not in